Welcome back. In this video, we are going to be working on Chapter 6, Lesson 2 in Accounting 1. We have started the worksheet where we have listed all of our accounts and their current balances. In this one, we're going to be doing those adjusting entries that I talked about in the last video. So we're going to analyze and explain the adjustments for supplies and prepaid insurance, and then complete those adjustment columns. So there's a lot of terminology for this lesson. However, there's not necessarily a lot of work for it. So whenever we're planning the adjustments, first of all, cash paid for an expense in one fiscal period that's not used until the later period is called a prepaid expense. So like all of that prepaid insurance that we did. Also supplies, we might have bought this period, but not used them till next period. Reporting income when it is earned and expenses when they are incurred is called accrual-based accounting. That means whenever you earn money, you count it, regardless of when you're paid for it, and expenses are counted when they're actually used. Generally accepted accounting principles, your GAAP, require the use of accrual-based counting. Reporting income when cash is received and expenses when the cash is paid is called a cash basis accounting. So this is something a lot of small businesses, including mine, use the cash basis of accounting. Whenever I write a check, that's whenever my expense is counted. Whether I buy an entire truckload of pencils today and don't use them for the next 3 years. Changes recorded on a worksheet to update the general ledger accounts at the end of the fiscal period are called adjustments. That's what we're going to be doing now. So if you see here, one of our main accounts that we're going to adjust is supplies. So we know that we have been recording supplies, and we had recorded that we had $620 in the supply cabinet. Well, what we did is we went back to our cabinet and we counted. And we did not have $620 worth of supplies. We only had $90 worth of supplies. So we need to make this $620 debit become just a $90 debit. And to do that, to make a debit get smaller, we have to do a credit. So we're going to credit supplies for $530. And if we have a credit, we have to have a debit. So that other debit is going to go under supplies expense. Basically, then what this is going to show is that we have used $530 worth of supplies during this period, and we have $90 left to start the next period. We do go ahead and put these little A's here so that you know that they're related. The next adjustment would have a B, a C, so on. So whenever I put the supplies adjustment on the worksheet, I'm going to go to my supplies row where I had this previous debit of $620. And I'm just going to go over to my adjustment columns, and I'm going to put them all on there. I'm going to put in my credit of $530 because that's what we're reducing on the amount of our supplies by. That A is going to correspond down here to the supplies expense where I'm going to have a debit because all expenses are going to have a debit because they're increasing. They're a running total of $530. We're going to put that A in parentheses. Okay, the next adjustment we have to do is insurance. So for prepaid insurance, we have been paying our insurance, and we have it showing that we have $900 worth of insurance. Well, that's not exactly correct because every day that passes, we used up some of our insurance. Whether we needed it or not, we have used it up. It's expired. It's no longer good. So we checked, and we actually have $750 worth of insurance coverage that has already been paid for. So what we need to do is we need to reduce this $900 debit balance by $150. So we're going to put that $150 in the credit column, and the opposite for the credit is going to be the debit to insurance expense. And again, we're going to put the little B's this time to show that those correspond together. Here it is putting it on the worksheet. Go ahead and put all the arrows on there. Oops, too many. So we are going to go to our prepaid insurance. Now, my numbers are different than the way they do it, but I go to prepaid insurance. I'm going to go ahead and put in my credit amount of 150 because that's what we want to reduce by. And then I'm going to go to my insurance expense and enter that as a debit. Now, all of this is happening in the adjustment columns. For this textbook and this chapter, we are only going to have 4 items entered into the adjustment columns: the supplies expense, prepaid insurance, and insurance expense. So here you can see what those look like. These white lines just mean that part of it's not showing. We have our 530 credit, 530 debit, 150 debit, 150 credit. Just look at that and make sure your debits and credits line up. Add them up. They should equal. If they don't equal, do not go on. Then you would draw a single line to show that you're going to be doing math, and then you're going to draw your double rule across to show that your debits and credits equal. Okay, question. Explain how the concept of matching expenses with revenue relates to adjustments. So it's just saying that your expense should be reported in the same fiscal period that it was used to produce the revenue. So if I bought a truckload of pencils on January 1st, but didn't use some of them until August, I need to make sure that it's in the same fiscal period of August, because that's whenever I used my pencils. List the 4 questions asked in analyzing an adjustment on the worksheet. Number 1, what is the balance of the account to be adjusted, meaning what is its current balance? What should the balance be for that account? That's where you go to your supply closet and you count how many pencils you have. What must be done to correct the account balance? Typically, if you've got a debit and you need to make it smaller, you're going to make it smaller with a credit, or vice versa. And then what adjustments is made? So are we going to debit or credit? Okay, so that's the end of the slideshow. So let's go ahead and do the work together problem. Here we've got work together. It says on April the 30th of the current year, Fix-It Now has completed the trial balance columns of the worksheet. That's what we did yesterday. We're now going to analyze the adjustment information given into debit and credit parts and record the adjustments on the worksheet and then total the adjustment columns. So this is saying, here is our adjustments. This does not mean this is the numbers that go in the adjustment column. That is not what goes in the adjustment column. This is what we need our total ending balance to be. So supplies on hand, we look and it says we have $228 worth of supplies. Well, that's not true. We went and counted and we only have $75 worth of supplies. So we're going to have to take this $228 debit and we're going to have to reduce it down so it's only a $750 credit. So if we do the math and take 228 minus $75, it needs to be reduced by $153. So I'm just going to come over here to my credit column in my adjustments section. I know that I want credit because this was a debit and I have to make it smaller. And I'm going to put in 153. Okay, now I told you in the slides to make sure you put a little A here to show how they relate. The computer program is not going to let you do that. If you're doing this on the paper packet, be sure that you put a little A in parentheses right here. Okay, now that $153 credit has to be a debit somewhere else. So if we had it in supplies, our other account is going to be supplies expense. So we're going to come to the debit column and put 153. And again, if you're on paper, go ahead and put the little A here. The next says the value of our prepaid insurance is $250. Well, we have our prepaid insurance of being $375. So we have it's too high. So we need to take $375 minus our $250. So we need to reduce this by $125. We need to reduce a debit. So to reduce a debit, we're going to make a credit of $125. And if you're on paper, you would go ahead and put your little B there. And the opposite of prepaid insurance, its account is going to be insurance expense because we have used up $125 worth of insurance. Okay, we're going to add those numbers together. So if I add up my debit column, I get $278. And if I add up my credit column, I'm also going to get $278. Okay, my debits equal my credits. So I am good with that one. Just make sure there's not a step 2. And there is not. So go ahead, then you're going to need to do your application problem for homework. And if there's a vocabulary set in MindTap, you're going to need to do it. Also, let me know if you have any questions.